I watched the woman I loved walk away from me for the second and final time beneath the bright afternoon sun, carrying the last box of her belongings toward a waiting car. For years of love, countless promises, and dreams of growing old together disappeared in a matter of minutes. I stood alone in the driveway feeling hollow, convinced there was nothing left to fight for. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around expecting sympathy, perhaps a goodbye, or a few polite words from her mother before she left as well. Instead, she looked directly into my eyes, folded her arms, and calmly said something that would completely change the course of my life. She said it was her turn now. At that moment, I had no idea whether she intended to comfort me, confront me, or destroy what little remained of my broken heart. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and the beauty of second chances, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who may need encouragement today, and subscribe to the channel, A Journey of Hearts. Your support helps these heartfelt stories reach people searching for hope in difficult times. My name is Leontes Hale. I was 39 years old and worked as a landscape architect. For most of my adult life, I believed love was simple. Two people meet. They build trust. They overcome challenges. And eventually they grow old together. Life later taught me that love is rarely simple. Sometimes people enter relationships carrying invisible wounds. Sometimes they expect others to heal pain that began long before they ever met. And sometimes, despite loving each other deeply, two people simply become exhausted from trying to save something already slipping through their fingers. The woman I loved was named Callista Wren. She was 36 years old, intelligent, creative, and worked as an interior designer. We met during a charity event where volunteers were renovating a community center. She painted walls while singing softly to herself. I planted flowers outside. By lunchtime, we were sharing sandwiches. By sunset, we exchanged numbers. 6 months later we moved in together. A year after that, we became engaged. People often admired us. We laughed easily. Traveled often. Hosted holiday dinners. Adopted a rescue dog named Jasper. From the outside, we looked like a couple destined for a happy ending. But appearances can hide painful truths. Callista struggled with abandonment issues. Her father left when she was 9 years old. For years she watched her mother work multiple jobs while trying to provide stability. She learned early that people leave. Promises break. And happiness rarely lasts. At first, those fears seemed manageable. She occasionally became anxious when I traveled for work. Sometimes she needed reassurance. I happily provided it. I loved her. Supporting her felt natural. But gradually anxiety transformed into distrust. She questioned innocent conversations. She worried constantly about betrayal. If I answered messages late, she became upset. If I attended networking events, she feared I would meet someone better. I encouraged therapy. She attended sessions for several months. Progress appeared. Then setbacks returned. Meanwhile, I carried struggles of my own. My younger sister passed away from cancer 5 years earlier. After losing her, I developed a habit of avoiding conflict. I hated arguments. I preferred silence over confrontation. Whenever Callista accused me unfairly, I apologized simply to restore peace. That strategy worked temporarily. But unspoken frustrations accumulated. Over time, we both changed. She became increasingly suspicious. I became emotionally distant. Conversations grew shorter. Affection became less frequent. Wedding plans were postponed twice. Friends noticed tension. Family members expressed concern. Still, neither of us wanted to give up. We tried counseling together. We planned weekend trips. We promised each other fresh starts. Yet every improvement seemed temporary. Then one evening she discovered an old photograph on my phone. It was a picture of me and a female colleague celebrating a completed project. There was nothing inappropriate about it. But Callista interpreted it differently. The argument that followed lasted hours. Accusations. Tears. Old wounds reopened. And finally she admitted something devastating. She no longer knew how to love without fearing loss. And she was tired. Tired of doubting. Tired of worrying. Tired of fighting battles inside her own mind. A week later, she moved out. 3 months passed. Occasionally we exchanged messages. Discussed reconciliation. Met for coffee. But every conversation eventually circled back to the same problems. Fear. Trust. Pain. Neither of us knew how to move forward. Then came that bright afternoon. She returned to collect the last of her belongings. Books. Clothes. Kitchen items. Photographs. I helped carry boxes silently. Neither of us cried. Perhaps we had exhausted all tears already. When everything was loaded into her car, she hugged Jasper goodbye. Looked at me for a long moment. Then drove away. I watched until her vehicle disappeared. I believed the story had ended. Then footsteps approached. Her mother remained standing nearby. Her name was Virella. She was 62 years old. Elegant. Warm. And remarkably resilient. After her husband abandoned the family decades earlier, she raised Callista alone. She worked as a seamstress during mornings and cleaned offices at night. Despite hardships, she maintained kindness. She remembered birthdays. Cooked meals for neighbors. Volunteered at shelters. She treated me like a son from the day we met. As she approached me, I expected sympathy. Instead, she surprised me. She said it was her turn now. At first I misunderstood. I wondered whether she planned to criticize me. Defend her daughter. Demand explanations. Instead, she invited me inside the now nearly empty house. We sat in the living room surrounded by blank walls and packed boxes. Sunlight streamed through windows. Dust floated quietly through the air. Then she began speaking. She admitted watching our relationship deteriorate had been painful. Not because she blamed me. But because she recognized familiar patterns. She saw herself inside her daughter. The fear. The insecurity. The constant expectation of abandonment. For years, Virella protected Callista from disappointment. She compensated for her absent father. Worked harder. Loved harder. Sacrificed endlessly. But in doing so, she unintentionally taught her daughter that love requires constant effort to prevent people from leaving. Callista grew up believing affection must always be earned. That mistakes lead to rejection. That happiness remains temporary. Virella wiped tears from her eyes before continuing. She confessed carrying guilt for decades. She spent years blaming her former husband. Yet she eventually realized she also contributed to her daughter's struggles. She rarely discussed emotions openly. She hid her own pain. Pretended everything was fine. And Callista learned to suppress feelings instead of processing them. Then she explained what she meant by saying it was her turn. She intended to help heal her daughter. Not by interfering. Not by forcing reconciliation. But by finally becoming the mother her adult daughter still desperately needed. She planned to move in with Callista temporarily. Encourage therapy again. Talk honestly about past wounds. Share stories she had hidden. Apologize for mistakes. Support healing. Because mothers never stop being mothers. Even when children become adults. She then asked something unexpected. She asked me not to wait. Not to pause my life hoping Callista would return. She said genuine love sometimes means stepping aside while someone learns how to save themselves. If destiny reunited us someday, wonderful. If not, our love still mattered. Because some relationships aren't meant to last forever. Some exist to reveal what needs healing. Her words affected me deeply. For months I blamed myself. Wondered whether greater patience could have changed outcomes. Questioned every decision. But hearing her perspective lifted a burden. Perhaps love alone isn't always enough. Sometimes people need to confront personal battles independently. Over the following months, Virella kept her promise. Occasionally she updated me. Callista resumed therapy. Started journaling. Joined support groups. Learned techniques to manage anxiety. Progress wasn't immediate. There were setbacks. Tears. Frustration. But slowly, changes appeared. Meanwhile, I focused on rebuilding myself. I traveled. Visited my parents more often. Expanded my business. Started teaching gardening workshops. Met new friends. And gradually rediscovered joy. One afternoon nearly a year later, Virella invited me for tea. I hesitated. Unsure what awaited. But curiosity won. When I arrived, I noticed differences immediately. The apartment felt brighter. Plants decorated windowsills. Soft music played. And Callista stood in the kitchen smiling nervously. She looked healthier. More peaceful. She seemed lighter. We talked for hours. Not about reconciliation. Not initially. We simply shared experiences. Discussed therapy. Discussed growth. Discussed mistakes. For the first time, she accepted responsibility without drowning in guilt. She admitted expecting me to prove love endlessly because she never believed she deserved unconditional affection. And I admitted avoiding difficult conversations because conflict reminded me of losing my sister. We both learned painful lessons. Healing changed us. Not into perfect people. But into more honest ones. Over the next several months, friendship returned. Then companionship. Then affection. There was no rushing. No grand promises. Only patience. Virella watched quietly. Never interfering. Only smiling whenever she saw us laughing again. 2 years after Callista moved out, I proposed once more. This time beneath blooming cherry trees in a botanical garden. No audience. No elaborate decorations. Only 2 people choosing each other after learning how to choose themselves first. She said yes. And when we married the following spring, Virella walked her daughter down the aisle. Not because tradition demanded it. But because she helped guide her daughter back toward emotional freedom. Special request: comment below with the words, "Healing begins at home," if you believe family support can help mend even the deepest emotional wounds. Before this story ends, if it touched your heart even a little, please like this video, share it with someone navigating heartbreak, leave a comment telling us what moved you most, and subscribe to A Journey of Hearts. Your support allows these stories to reach people silently struggling with fear, grief, and loneliness. Today, whenever someone asks what saved our relationship, I don't mention therapy first. I don't mention time apart. I don't mention second chances. I mention a mother. A woman who refused to watch her daughter repeat generations of pain. A woman brave enough to admit her own mistakes. A woman who understood that loving children doesn't end when they become adults. Sometimes it means standing beside them while they rebuild themselves from broken pieces. I truly believed everything was over that afternoon. I watched the woman I loved drive away and accepted defeat. But love has unusual ways of returning. Sometimes not through grand gestures. Not through dramatic confessions, but through quiet footsteps approaching from behind. And a mother gently saying that now it was finally her turn. Because some people don't merely raise children. They spend entire lifetimes helping them find their way back to themselves. And perhaps that is one of the purest forms of love this world will ever know.